I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. We see in the construction of this great hall that was more than a promise. It was a profound...
Well, it finally happened. After years of escalating drama, bitter family feuds, and revealing Netflix tell-alls, King Charles did the one thing everyone said he was too soft, too sentimental to ever actually do. He stripped Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of every single royal title they had left. There is no more Duke and Duchess of Sussex. There is no more His Royal Highness or Her Royal Highness. From now on, it's just Harry and Meghan. Regular people. Done. And here's the truly wild part. Buckingham Palace didn't even make a big announcement about it. There was no press conference, no forewarning to the media, nothing. They just quietly updated the official royal website and erased every trace of those titles as if they never existed in the first place. The move was cold, it was quiet, and it was absolute. For 3 years, Harry and Meghan had been dancing between two worlds, trying to be half royal and half celebrity. But the crown just made it official. You cannot serve the interests of a California lifestyle brand and the British palace at the same time. And trust me, the timing of this decision was not random at all. But what was the final straw that actually pushed King Charles to do it? And why are palace insiders saying it was really Prince William pulling the strings behind the scenes? It would mean the world to us here at the Ruby Report if you hit that subscribe button and smash the like, because this story gets way messier than you think. Let's get into it. So, what finally pushed Charles to cut the cord for good? Here's where things get messy. Word from deep inside the palace is that the final trigger was the discovery that Meghan had used her official Duchess title in new business filings. Yes, you heard that right. Even after she had reportedly promised the late Queen Elizabeth that she would never mix royalty with money, she went ahead and did it anyway. And for the palace, that was all it took. Now, get this. These weren't just casual mentions of her title either. We are talking about official business paperwork, the whole 9 yards. The title Duchess of Sussex was being used front and center, leveraged to boost her business deals and add a layer of prestige. And when that news reached the palace walls, you can only imagine how well that went over. People who work within the royal household said the atmosphere completely shifted in an instant. What had been a long-simmering frustration for years suddenly became something else entirely, something much colder and more decisive. To the palace establishment, it looked like a calculated slap in the face. But to Prince William, it was seen as an absolute humiliation. People close to the situation claimed that the future king was losing it, telling aides that Meghan had turned the crown into a cheapening brand. He had been watching this play out for months, seeing the royal family name attached to commercial deals and entertainment projects, and every single time it happened, it chipped away at the very institution he is destined to inherit one day. The future king wasn't just annoyed anymore, he was done. And listen, this wasn't just about hurt feelings or petty family drama. This was about power and what the monarchy even means in the modern world. Because in that moment, Charles wasn't just deciding as a father, he was being forced to decide as a king. The weight of that crown is supposed to mean something, and if he didn't draw a hard line somewhere, the whole institution would just keep unraveling. If he didn't act first, things would spiral even further out of control. The very last thing he wanted was for the royal family to become a global laughingstock while everyone debated their next move on social media and morning talk shows. So, he acted swiftly and quietly. Some people close to him say the king didn't do this out of anger. He did it out of survival. The monarchy simply could not afford another mess, not with everything else already hanging by a thread, and not with the world watching every single move they made, just waiting for the next scandal to drop. For King Charles, this wasn't some emotional, reactive decision or a moment of weakness. This was a game of chess, not checkers. It was strategic, calculated, and deliberate. And guess who was moving the pieces right there behind him? That's right, Prince William. Because while Charles might have been the one to sign the papers, make no mistake, this was William's move. For months, the future king had been quietly, but persistently, pushing his father to take back control. He was tired of watching the monarchy he loved turn into a daytime soap opera. Every podcast jab, every Netflix confession, every explosive headline that dropped had chipped away at the credibility of the crown. And William, he was watching it all crumble, piece by piece, interview by interview. Here's the thing, William is not the type to blow up publicly. He's calculated, measured, and extremely careful with his words. But behind the closed doors of the palace, people say he was absolutely seething. Each time another story came out, each time the Sussex name appeared in the entertainment news cycle instead of in reports of actual royal duties, it ate away at him. This wasn't how royalty was supposed to work. This wasn't the institution his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, had dedicated her entire life to building, and he was not about to let it continue to be dismantled on his watch. Palace insiders say that during one particularly heated conversation, William told his father, "You cannot be king and be afraid of upsetting people who have already left the family." And that was it. The heir to the throne had spoken. Think about that for a second. The son telling the father, the king, that it was time to start acting like a king. That isn't just advice. That's a power shift happening in real time. That is the next generation stepping up and declaring that enough is enough. Those close to the palace claim William had come to see Harry and Meghan as a liability, not a loss. And that is a cold way to look at your own brother, but that's exactly where his head was at. To him, protecting the crown meant cutting off anyone who used royal prestige as a ladder to fame and fortune, while simultaneously trashing the very institution that gave them that prestige in the first place. You can't have it both ways. You can't bash the family on global streaming platforms and then turn around and use their titles to sell your new lifestyle brand. He wasn't being cruel about it. He was being cold, strategic, and focused. It was business, not personal. This was William's first real, public flex of his authority as the future king. And behind closed doors, it sent shockwaves through the royal staff. The younger generation wasn't waiting around anymore. The future king was already making moves, already reshaping how things would work when his time eventually came. The era of royal exceptions was officially over. No more tiptoeing around uncomfortable decisions, and no more letting things slide just because it's family. William wanted discipline, structure, and hard boundaries that would not be crossed. And as the dust settled, Buckingham Palace finally started looking like it had a backbone again. While the decision looked decisive from the outside, behind the palace gates, King Charles wasn't celebrating his victory. He was being torn apart by it. For weeks leading up to the decision, he had wrestled with it privately, losing sleep, pacing the historic halls at night, and replaying difficult conversations over and over in his head. As a father, he still saw his youngest son, the little boy who once followed him through the gardens at Highgrove, not the man now living under the California sunshine. He remembered Harry's laugh, the way he would light up a room, the way he would throw himself into causes he truly believed in. Those memories didn't just disappear because things got messy. But as a king, he saw something else entirely. He saw a ticking threat to the monarchy's image and its very survival. He saw the headlines piling up, the interviews getting more personal, and the family's private stories being sold to the highest bidder. And every single one of those stories made the crown look weaker, more outdated, and increasingly irrelevant. The weight of both of those realities was crushing him. Those close to the palace say Charles's health and stress levels were getting worse by the day. He wasn't sleeping right, he wasn't eating properly, and people who had worked with him for years noticed the dramatic change. He looked older, more tired, and more worn down than they had ever seen him. The thing that haunted him the most was the dread of being remembered as the king who let love cloud his duty, the king who was too soft to make the hard calls when they mattered most. One insider recalled the moment the final paperwork landed on his desk. It sat there for what felt like an eternity. The silence in the room was heavy, the air was cold. Everyone present knew what this signature meant. Charles stared at those documents like they were a death sentence, and in a way, maybe they were a death sentence for the relationship he had always hoped he could one day repair with his son. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the pen, and then he finally said, more to himself than to anyone else, "He is my son, but I am the king." And with one stroke of the pen, He made the hardest decision of his reign. But listen, it wasn't just about punishment. It was about restoring balance to something that had been tilted for way too long. For years, the monarchy had been seen as weak and reactive, constantly cleaning up after the Sussex PR storms. This was Charles's way of finally reasserting control and reminding everyone that the crown isn't sentimental, it's an institution. It has rules, it has expectations, and if you can't meet them, you don't get to keep the privileges. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in sunny Montecito, Meghan Markle was reportedly livid. Sources claimed that when she first heard the news, she was in a state of disbelief, thinking it had to be a mistake. Surely the palace wouldn't actually go through with it. Surely someone would call and say it was just a clerical error. But then the official royal website was updated, confirming it for the world to see, and reality hit hard. The titles were gone. The Duchess was no more. She allegedly called the palace's decision a targeted attack, a deliberate move designed to undermine everything she had built. And here's what she expected to happen next: a massive wave of public support. She thought people would rally behind her, that Hollywood would come to her defense, and that her celebrity friends would flood social media with statements of solidarity. But that backlash she was waiting for, it never came. Not from the US media, not from her celebrity friends, not from anyone. Even Hollywood, which was once her biggest fan base, went completely quiet. The silence was deafening, and it said more than any statement ever could. Suddenly, Meghan's entire brand looked shaky. Everything she had built, from her lifestyle ventures to her media projects, had leaned heavily on her Duchess identity. That title opened doors, it got meetings, and it secured deals. Without it, the whole enterprise started looking unstable. A Hollywood insider put it bluntly at the time: her title was her brand. Without it, the shine fades fast. If Meghan's reaction was one of pure fury, Harry's was one of pure, crushing heartbreak. Sources say he took the news harder than anyone expected. For him, those titles weren't about money or fame or business deals. They were about his identity. They were the very last thread connecting him to the only world he had ever known, the world he was born into, raised in, and shaped by. Without those titles, who was he even supposed to be? The moment he learned of his father's decision, Harry reportedly made a private, desperate phone call to Charles. And get this, he wasn't angry. He wasn't yelling or making demands. He was pleading, like a son reaching out to his father one last time, hoping for some kind of mercy. He reminded his father of their family bond, of all the years they had shared. And then, he brought up his mother, Diana. He reminded Charles of the promise that Diana's boys would always be protected, always be looked after, and always have a place in the family, no matter what. That was supposed to be sacred. Harry was begging his father to remember that they were more than just king and prince. They were father and son. But Charles didn't bend, not even a little. A palace insider claimed the king listened quietly, letting Harry get it all out, and then simply said, "You have made your choices, Harry. Now I must make mine." That was it. No shouting, no dramatic argument, just that one cold, final statement. And then the call ended. From that point on, Harry withdrew. Friends say he's been more distant and subdued, like a light went out somewhere inside him. He goes through the motions of life in California, but his mind and his heart are still back in Windsor. Losing his royal identity wasn't just a career blow, it was a spiritual exile. He wasn't Prince Harry anymore. He was just Harry, a guy living in California with a famous wife and a complicated past. And somehow, that simple title, or lack of one, felt heavier than all the ones he had lost. But here's where it gets even messier. By stripping their titles, Charles also wiped the slate clean for the future of the monarchy. This move silenced years of criticism about double standards. But the ones caught in the crossfire were Archie and Lilibet. With their parents' titles gone, any chance of a royal rank in their future went with it. They would never be Prince Archie or Princess Lilibet. Meghan allegedly told friends that Charles had robbed her children of their legacy. But inside the palace, the view was completely different. That legacy isn't inherited, it's earned through service. Their view was that Archie and Lilibet would grow up as Americans with normal childhoods, far away from the royal fishbowl, which is exactly what their parents said they wanted. To the monarchy, this wasn't cruelty, it was cleanup. It was about protecting the institution from future complications and making sure the cycle of half-in, half-out royalty didn't repeat with the next generation. Cold, maybe, but from their perspective, absolutely necessary. And so, just like that, the monarchy started looking like itself again. The royal website got updated, the paperwork got sealed, and the names Duke and Duchess of Sussex were erased. The statement it sent was impossible to miss. Royal status isn't a part-time gig you keep in your back pocket for whenever it's convenient. For Charles, it was the hardest choice a father could make. For William, it was validation that his vision for a stronger monarchy was the right one. And for Harry and Meghan, it was the final, unavoidable consequence. The stark reminder that you can walk away from the palace, but you can't take the kingdom with you.